Let's see. No, it's just because I'm trying to... See, that's... Alright, I can do this. Okay.
That sounds about right.
Sounds about right. And that's really all I got. I tried to learn as much of it as I could in a very short time frame, but
I did kind of apply some pressure.
He did kind of apply some pressure. That's true.
Because I was going to go right after that into... And I feel the time's a ways to go. And so on and so forth.
And so on and so forth. But you need to get that... And I feel...
Well, you know, the one thing for me is I didn't want to try and do...
He kind of only sounds like that on the... Because you were specifically... The acoustic Headbangers Ball version that you're talking about, he doesn't really do that as much.
But even without that, he has a very signature voice. And if you want to copy it, it's very much like, oh, and I feel the time's a ways to go. So where you going till tomorrow when I'll see that these are lies to come. But I don't want to do it that way. So just in case you hadn't noticed... We're doing a bit of a tribute video for Scott Weiland, who passed away about almost 2 weeks ago at this point. It was December 3rd. Kind of a big moment in modern music history, I'd say. I mean, he was known for being the lead singer of Stone Temple Pilots, obviously, Velvet Revolver, currently touring with Scott Weiland and the Wildcats, I think it was. I mean, I kind of fluctuate on following his career.
I don't know, and this is... I will defer most of this to Kevin, because Kevin is a fan, and I just honestly did not know much about Scott Weiland at all, or... Like, I mean, everyone's heard Plush. Like, that was... What other radio songs would I have heard? Literally, I don't know.
Plush, you would know. Creep comes up. Wicked Garden comes up. One of my actual favorite songs besides Plush is actually Vaseline, which is worth checking out because it has a really interesting like chorus line to it. And I mean, you can really go into it. It's like... Flies in the Vaseline we are, sometimes it blows my mind, keep getting stuck here all the time.
I feel bad that we're doing a tribute episode and I don't know, but at the same time, no, I mean,
but it's like it's not for everybody.
Well, where does Stone Temple Pilots start for you?
When I was, I would say about middle school, first starting to hear that. That's when I started really developing my own music taste. And it wasn't until high school that I actually owned one of their albums. I had the compilation album Thank You, which is why I know those certain songs, because that's where they put all of their popular songs from the time. And it really just hit me right. I really enjoyed his sound. I liked that it was very artistic. He kind of writes similarly to, or wrote similarly to Anthony Kiedis, that is very poetic, can be a little convoluted at times. Just to really get into some of the background, I mean, Stone Temple Pilots was active late 80s, like 88, 89, all the way through with some breaks to 2012, 2013, and they were considered kind of a poser band, and we had a little bit of this discussion before. They were really, really treated as basically copying off of Nirvana, especially Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, and just in a lot of the credit of their ability was just swept out right from under them. And it wasn't until much later in Scott Weiland's career, and the band in general's career, that people kind of reassessed and realized that, you know, it was a little bit of unfairly critical to go that hard on them.
You can't blame someone for sounding like how bands sounded at a time. I mean, sometimes you can.
When it's like clearly obvious.
When it's really, but at the same time, it's like I don't know. They started at the same time as a lot of the bands that they're being accused of kind of, you know, ripping off or like taking the sound. That's just what was happening at the time, and you know,
You can't really fault them for just, you know, they found their genre and just really went for it.
Yeah.
And it's almost, it's funny, I'd almost say the same kind of thing repeated itself in the Velvet Revolver era, which, in case you don't know, was basically Guns N' Roses minus Axl and then plus Scott Weiland. I had their first album, and I felt that was it was pretty decent. I mean, I was never a huge Guns N' Roses fan. I thought they had some good tracks and whatnot, and Slash, of course, is a great guitarist. But I thought the combination worked, and I know that they were not well received there either. Well, he wasn't, since it wasn't the rest of the band so much. But he's definitely had a career that's been fraught with criticism, despite definitely being a talented musician. And especially in the aftermath of his death, a lot of people went back and were like, oh, so all those things I said, really, I didn't mean them. He's actually really great.
I mean, I don't know. I was trying to think about this, and again, I really don't have as much of an opinion on the work and career of a person who I didn't really listen to, so I can't say this or that. But I'm really hoping that, like, when an artist I don't like passes, that I'm going to be like, well, that was sad, but I'm still not changing my opinion. Because it always does bug me when people are like, you know.
I mean, there's a difference between, like, because like you were saying, it's like you really just don't know Stone Temple Pilots work that much.
I don't know their work. I mean, I've heard whatever I've heard on the radio, but at the same time, you know, when you sent me the text last week saying like we should do a tribute to it, I'm just like,
huh?
No. It was just a matter of just like, I don't know, but I understand that we probably should, and ultimately that you should.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I
wasn't gonna rain on your parade being like, I don't know this band, we're not doing it.
What's the point?
What's the point? No, there's a point to it, and I mean, how does his passing especially kind of affect, like, I mean, what weight does that carry for you?
It
obviously not knowing him personally, but yeah.
It definitely makes me want to go back and really dive into his career and see the pattern, because he was very well known for his drug habits, and like I know there were a couple of other comparisons that were made. Maybe was it I was gonna say Chris Farley, but I don't think that's the right comparison. He would go from being, I guess Anthony Kiedis would be one, like very clean, very on the level at one moment, and you could see him a week or two later and it would just be completely flipped. He'd be back in the middle of a you know, a drug frenzy, and it made him very unpredictable, very difficult to work with, and I would want to go back and really analyze that a lot more. It's funny, I talk about being a fan and everything, and I have his autobiography and I didn't finish it, which, you know, sounds wonderful.
It happens. You know, I'm a fan of Bruce Campbell, and I've never read the last 2 chapters of If Chins Could Kill, which is an amazing book that I need to finish that I have on my shelf.
And it's like right there.
It's right there.
It's the same thing. Just in case you don't know, Scott Weiland's autobiography is called Not Dead and Not For Sale. And it's literally like on a shelf next to where I sleep. And I'm like, right there, some other time.
Finish it.
But now that it's been, you know, on my mind, especially in the last couple of weeks, and really getting to know more about him, also through the people who knew him and changed their opinions, and have just in general talked about his career. He's definitely worked with a lot of musicians. I mean, it's really the period of that, like the late 80s into throughout the 90s. It's a lot of collaboration. Mm-hmm. And he toured with, forgetting a lot of band names. He toured with a lot of groups that are still really big right now. Smashing Pumpkins he was definitely affiliated with. I can't even think of all the names right now.
Well, you know, you're.
But it's like it's incredible that he's done so much, and again, harking back, like, and without being very like well received as an artist. So I mean, how can you have a career that in depth?
I still think he was pretty well received, especially the kind of outpouring that followed. Like, you know, like it seemed really personal for a lot of, like, you know, people's relation to Stone Temple Pilots, you know, who were fans. Like, you know.
And one thing that I didn't really do, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to, is I was gonna check and see how many like tribute videos came out after his passing, like to see what kind of you know, post-mortem reception was happening. I'm presuming there are probably a lot of covers out there of songs right now. I know many radio stations really try to play as much of his music as possible. But, you know, this was just a moment that I really wanted to take to just talk about him, because I don't know how much has really been out there just in that discussion. And as a musical talent, and what we do here on this show is we talk about the way artists influence culture. And generally, it's with that question of like
the way culture forces music to happen.
Like that, it's that connection between the two, and you know, it's mainly been the question of like, how did this happen?
That everything has historical relevance, and you know that truly nothing is trivial once you give it enough time and consideration.
Exactly.
You know, it's
and I think this is a real opportunity to take an artist who was buried deep in a troubling time in music. There were a lot of drug habits going on. I don't know if there are now, but it's this era of just really intense drug use.
That's true. I think just speaking of that time period, because like, I don't know, the stuff I've heard about like the 60s and the 70s in regards to drug use sounds a lot crazier, but I think it was...
Different kind of drugs, though, too.
Different kind of drugs, though, that's true. I think it was the real strong presence of heroin, and I think it was... I think that the strong presence of heroin, the rather early death of Kurt Cobain, and when did like Lane Staley die from Alice in Chains? I'm trying to remember, but he was another one where it was just like it wasn't these like, yeah, rock and roll, like do drugs, die in a ball of fire. It was very much like, no, we I think really got to see like the decline of like a couple like big musicians of the time.
Yeah.
In a way that was very, that was. I mean, I don't know how public Kurt Cobain's thing really was. We know a lot of details now, but
and a lot of that is the development in the technology of information sharing.
Right. But I think just having a lot of that go on really changed it.
Thank you for bringing up Lane Staley too. Totally didn't even think about Alice in Chains. And that would be what, late 90s? Something like that?
See, that's the thing, is I would swear it was earlier, but and I'm not gonna. I think it'd be a little crass to do like the notes that we do there, but it was also, you know, he also had a pretty decent fucking drug problem, you know, so. I think that's just what it was. I think it was the first time where we really got to see like, oh, this is what rock stars doing drugs actually looks like. You don't just get to see the glamorous, you know, stuff of it.
And speaking about music and the decline of the drug culture, how much was there before like the grunge era where there was actual music about the negative sides of drugs? Because I know that Nirvana.
Oh no! Well,
Kurt Cobain, Staley, and Alice in Chains. They wrote a lot of music about the negatives of drug use.
Kind of. No, I don't know. I see. That's the thing, is that really thinking about Nirvana, I can't really think about many songs they wrote that were actually about drugs. It could be easy to interpret a fair amount of Alice in Chains songs that I think could be about.
Well, the album, which is the one, Rooster. Is that the name of the album, or is that just the one song? Whatever album that is,
right.
That's the only song on that album that's not about drugs.
Yeah. No, Kurt Cobain, I don't know if he actually really wrote a lot of songs about drugs, but there's also this thing about Kurt Cobain's music where it's also like music forward that we're supposed to be having a tribute to Scott Weiland, and I'm talking about.
Well,
Kurt
we can
Cobain.
tie that
No,
back.
we can tie it back in, but where Kurt Cobain's like, I remember the whole thing about like lyrics not being like super important. And no, that was, and I know that there's some really well written like Nirvana songs, but they always came up, I think, with the sound of the song first, and then kind of
Well, I would
filled in
put
lyrics
it.
as sounds.
I would put in the context of lyrics and drugs. I mean, you have the song "Lithium." "Lithium" by title is about the medication for bipolar disorder, and I think instead of directly writing about drugs, it was kind of more of an issue of like self-medicating, the way you feel when you're going through mental illness and self-medicating for mental illness. And so that's a different tone to the music. And I think Scott Weiland's music definitely had that influence to it. There was a lot of love and enjoyment.
What is literally the song I just played the opening guitar riff for? Plush. I was just like, literally, I'm not kidding, I was just like, no, I know the title of it. It's just my brain wants me to say it for some reason, Pillow, which...
Plush Pillow. Close enough. But that song, that song's about the murders of... what? It was a specific set of murders in Los Angeles, I believe. Okay. And he was so deeply affected by it that he actually wrote this song.
Okay, because that was one of those things where it's just like, you just heard it on the radio, and it was one of those songs where you just never listened to the lyrics for it, and then just really sitting here and like attempting to learn how to play it on guitar, and then being like, all right.
You realize that it's like listening to Tie Back to Nirvana, listening to Polly and realizing like, oh, this is a hostage situation.
That's true. Well, I always knew that about Polly, which I mean, I remember the first time I actually like listened to Polly was in like high school, and I was just like, oh shit.
This is a completely different tone of music.
Right. Good song, but
yeah, it definitely gives you the chills.
Oh yeah. Right, no, you were asking about like drugs and the history of rock and roll. I mean, even Lou Reed was, well, I mean, basically like Ray Charles was writing. Ray Charles wrote a song called "Let's Go Get Stoned."
Okay.
Which I actually played on my radio show for 420 like one year. My show was, I think my show was it on 420? It was the week of 420. Look, when I went to school in Santa Cruz, that was a big deal. No judgments.
Power of the people.
But no, it was a thing, but it was just like, yeah, it was at a college radio station. Everyone was getting high that day, so I was like, I'll play this Ray Charles song. I mean, then again, Ray Charles wasn't, I don't think he was really fucking, he was a pretty intense heroin addict I think. Yeah. Unless I'm wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure he shot up. He definitely had some drug issues. Yeah, so no, Ray Charles, but the first time where it's not necessarily like bad, but where someone starts talking openly about like kind of the gray area of drugs is like Lou Reed, like with heroin and White Light, White Heat, which is about amphetamines. Oh. Yeah. But yeah, no. In both cases, you have songs about drugs that are not like, and I'm waiting for my man, I'm waiting for my man, $26 in my hand. It's a song about buying drugs.
Okay,
so
makes sense.
So it had been going on since the 60s, but everyone tried to be like more sly about it. And then, I don't know if, I'm trying to think, like, Lou Reed and Iggy Pop are like one of the few people I can think of who are like writing songs about getting high and like being like fucked up and sad and how the drugs are messing with them. Though, what was it, that song that was, Johnny Cash sang it, but it was written by someone else. Wishing the Lord I was stoned. So definitely, like I said, I think the 90s was the crashing tidal wave where it wasn't just like
the party came to a halt.
Where the party comes to a halt because Kurt Cobain dies, and it wasn't a drug overdose. It didn't need to be at that point, like drugs and depression
somebody so
mental health
deeply
issues
affected,
and
by his issues.
you know, had just kind of, you know, so we suddenly became aware of like, oh, this isn't just like, oh man, you know, like it wasn't like the Jimi Hendrix death, which was really screwed up, but you know, wow, this got really heavy in like the wrong way. I think actually we should stop that here, just because I don't want it to detract from the fact that we're doing a tribute to a musician.
But it all ties back in together, because this is where we're kind of at in music culture right now, and I'd say this is probably closing in on being like the end of an era, because we have these 90s groups and or 80s, 90s groups that have really, they've either survived through these issues.
And they're kind of old dudes now.
Or they didn't make it. And like, this is like that point where you're hitting that barrier. You've hit those few.
How did he pass? I actually don't know about this.
They, I believe, are still doing the autopsy. The suspicion is drug overdose, but they don't want to make assumptions because there's not enough information.
Right, but you checked out just what was okay.
It was he was in his tour bus in Minnesota on his tour, and he was by himself and dead in his bedroom in the tour bus. So I mean, it's leaning that way, but there's nothing definitive yet. And I wouldn't want to say that he probably died of drugs, because you can't know in that situation until they get that confirmation.
Absolutely. That's sad, but
yeah.
I don't know. If you have anything, just kind of as a good statement for the tribute, or if there's anything you'd like to express, like for certain, like, you know, what would that be? Just like a.
God, really to encapsulate it all in once, just.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like
on the spot.
It's. I'd say it's an end of an era.
Yeah.
It really is, because I think even though maybe he was most well known for Stone Temple Pilots and for songs that had been, you know, long past, I think he really still represented something to music culture, and with his passing, that's really it's going to be ingrained in this moment right now, and I think that will be reflected in a very subtle way. I don't think it's something. His passing is like, oh, that's sad, he's gone. He was Stone Temple Pilots and Velvet Revolver and Scott Weiland and the Wildcats, if that is it, I believe so. But I think it means more on a deeper level in music, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah. What would you say, like, what was the thing where you knew you just had to make a tribute to him? Beyond just the fact that you're a fan of his passing,
was... Oh, wow. I was going to talk about this too, and I totally forgot about it till now. When I was in high school and I was singing, I really wanted to do that acoustic version of that song. Because it meant a lot to me.
Well, I'll learn the rest of the thing. I mean, that's what I could get. I could make a million excuses for myself, but you know.
You also only had a week on top of everything else you're doing.
On top of everything else I'm doing, just for there had been a lull, and I just got like a crazy amount of work like last week, like actual work, and now I just need to find the next job and the next thing. So,
but
if you're hiring an editor in Los Angeles, just saying.
In terms though of why it's so hit, that was like I needed to do something about it, was because it was like, while he was still alive, and you hear that even with like personal stuff, like when someone's still alive, you just always put it off. You're like, oh, it's something, it's just a song, I'll come back around to performing or something at some point. But like his passing was like, it really meant something to me to do something about it, to take that experience and what his work meant to me and be able to give something back because of it. And I really wanted to express that. And song or no song, just getting to sit here and talk about it in front of the camera really means a lot. Because how often does a hero of yours pass away? Not that he's like a hero, but like somebody who's had an influence on you. Like, I think that happens a lot of times where someone's a major influence in their life will pass away and they're like, oh, I don't have this anymore. and they don't do anything about it. They just kind of let it go and move on without them. And this is a chance to just express that back and say, you know, this meant something to me. And it always will.
That's good, man.
Thank you for listening.
Yeah.
I don't even know how long this is at this point.
I don't know. It's whatever, man.
We're here.
We're here. I guess I don't know, just to close it off, would you? Okay. Okay.
This will at some point be followed up with an actual video.
With an actual video of the song, but have a good night or a good morning whenever you're watching this. This might be released tomorrow, which is the day that Star Wars. By the way, but in earnest, you know, even having not been a fan, you know, I'm sorry to hear that he passed, and thank you, Kevin, for wanting to make it tribute. I think that's pretty awesome, and I hope that this meant something to you guys, and that you take something from it, and you know.
And in the words of the first Stone Temple Pilots album I ever had, thank you.
Oh, I got it. All right. And then,
So close.
So close. It's so much easier than it looks. By the way, this is actually super easy. Super easy. All right. Have a good night, everybody.
Take care.